This is Hannibal from the HannibalTV.com with a daily, or not a daily wrestling news update. This is my weekly review of the points I find interesting in Dave Meltzer's Wrestling Observer newsletter. There's lots more that happens in the newsletter that I don't really particularly find interesting, that I don't talk about. So anyone that wants to know that, you guys can get it. So let's jump into it. Both Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair are going to be appearing on the Raw 30th anniversary coming up from Philadelphia. It's funny that I'll be honest, I am a Ric Flair fan. He'll claim he was never that over in WWE, but he really was. I don't know why he claims that, but it's funny that just a couple of years ago, so many people were bashing Ric Flair and saying he was done because something from like 20 years ago came out about him. And now he's going to be back on Raw, and WWE recently produced a documentary on him. Hulk Hogan, who got in a lot of crap for saying the N-word just a couple of years ago, maybe more than a couple, maybe 3 or 4 now. I don't particularly recall, but they did take him off Tough Enough and remove him temporarily from the Hall of Fame. And it's just funny that that it's all forgotten about now. I'm not saying that either is right or wrong. I just find it funny because there were so many people saying, "Oh, both of these guys are done," blah 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 blah. But there they are. Big draws on Raw and the 30th anniversary. Oh, by the way, Teddy Long is also going to be there. I know that'll pop a rating. The Wall Street Journal reported on the 19th of January, Vince McMahon settled a multi-million-dollar out-of-court settlement with Rita Chatterton, the first WWE female referee who he had sex with in 1986, that she didn't, I guess, call the police right away or file charges right away. She's claiming that she was raped. There was a law that came into pass that I think between November 2022 and November 2023, people could sue over stuff that happened decades ago. So she made use of that law, and with all the bad publicity he's had lately, he settled it. They don't know the exact figure. It wasn't for the $11.75 million she was suing for, but it was several million apparently. Jerry McDivitt, Vince McMahon's attorney, who has an interview on this channel, by the way, said, quote, "Mr. McMahon denies and always denies raping Mrs. Chatterton. And he settled the case solely to avoid the cost of litigation," end quote. Probably not just the cost of litigation, but to have to go through that whole process when he's a billionaire, and if he gave her a couple million, I mean, that's pennies to him. So, yeah, I guess he, according to her, which I find this hard to believe, she claimed that she was going to become he told her she was going to become a big superstar, and she quit her job, but she was only being booked part-time, which I found weird, because why would you quit your job if you're only being booked part-time? You could still do your day job and do events in the Northeast and wait till things picked up to go full-time. And I guess she didn't have a contract or anything. But in the end, it looks like she's going to be probably taken care of for the rest of her life. She's got to be, not sure exactly how old she is now, but if she was in her 20s in 1986, 87, yeah, she's quite old. She's at least in her 60s. Piper's doing great. Thanks for the tip, Grandma Daisy. By the way, I'm no mathematician. But I did like that show MathNet that used to air in the 80s. Devon Dudley is finished with his job as a WWE producer. He's 50 now. Apparently, the reason Austin Theory was pulled from the Toronto house show December 30th was because he was recording a vignette with John Cena, potentially for WrestleMania. Billy Graham was moved out of ICU to the progressive care unit this week. He's still in very serious condition. He has a GoFundMe under Billy Graham. His heart rate and blood pressure are stable at this point, though. He has had to shave his head, though, apparently, which he's not too happy about, from what I understand. Cody Rhodes is going to be in the Royal Rumble. It's official now. Dynamite had a great crowd this week for them in Fresno, 5,300. Well, that's great for WWE, too. And they did a 0.31 rating. NXT did a 0.14 rating. Raw did a 0.43 rating and had the fourth lowest viewership in history. 1,489,000 people watched the show. Funny enough, they were in Cincinnati. They had 6,700 paid and 7,608 in the building. So they comped almost 1,000 tickets. Rampage was taped the previous week from LA, 0.13. SmackDown from Green Bay had 5,400, only 1,000 more than AEW. Impact and New Japan both did not get even a 0.01 rating. They did not rate. Women of Wrestling did a 0.07 rating. So why do we constantly hear so much about Impact and New Japan and hardly anything about Women of Wrestling? That kind of pisses me off, to be honest with you. They don't get the credit when they're doing way better in viewership than Impact and New Japan, but we never hear the end of New Japan or Impact. Power Slap did a 0.10 rating, better than both Women of Wrestling and Impact and New Japan. However, it was their first show. It was heavily criticized, and I agree with this. So this is according to Meltzer, who watched it. I didn't watch it because it was essentially people slapping each other with no ability to use movement or hands to defend themselves. It featured vicious knockouts, gigantic hematomas, and bad bruises as they decided who would get into the house for a reality show that's very similar to The Ultimate Fighter. That was from Dave Meltzer, who watched it. This is just the dumbest thing ever. Chris Nowinski, the concussions expert, former WWE wrestler, was on WWE Tough Enough 2, said, quote, "This is so sad. Note the fencing posture with the first brain injury. He may never be the same. Dana White and TBS should be ashamed. Pure exploitation. What's next? Who can survive a stabbing? I believe adults can choose to do dangerous jobs if they understand the risks, and reasonable efforts are made to protect them. But hits to the head with no defense is just sad. It reminds us that people who don't take the risks often exploit those who do," end quote. Apparently Dana White was not edited out of the episode, and he was all over the episode. I really don't think that this should be encouraged. I honestly don't. It's very, very dangerous. And I don't think kids should be growing up wanting to be slap fighters. I mean, as much as the political people were against UFC when it first came out, calling it human cockfighting and all that, at least you had the chance to put your hands up. At least you had the opportunity to defend yourself, and you're not just taking this straight brain injuries. So people like Dana White can make a huge profit off of you. And I don't. Good for Dana White if he could exploit these people, but I think this is something that whatever state it's being filmed in, which I think is Nevada, the fighting commissions should look at this and say, should this really be allowed? I know that Arnold Classic last year also had it, Arnold Sports Festival last year in Ohio. I don't know if they're having it this year or not, but there's no question these people are tough. But if this is the only way you can make yourself popular, I mean, that is sad. I'll agree with Christopher Nowinski on that one. In AEW news, Colt Cabana is back as a behind-the-scenes producer. Sir William Regal said this week that he was supposed to have a backstage job in AEW, but that never happened. I don't blame Tony Khan for that. He's better off used in front of the camera, to be perfectly honest with you. They need star power. They're definitely good at marketing, though. If they can get over 5,000 people to their shows, they don't always do that, but they get close numbers for their tapings to WWE. And they have way less star power than WWE. So that's impressive. Dax Hartwood from FTR said, by the way, he's on a paid vacation until April when his contract expires, according to reports. He says his chances of going to WWE decreased with Vince McMahon back. He told a story about after a match with New Day, quote, this is what Dax Hartwood said, according to Meltzer, quote, he goes to New Day and says, hey, great job, guys. Thank you. I appreciate that. They walk off and he leaves me in cash there. That's when he says, everyone tells me that you guys are the next great tag team. Everyone tells me you're the next Arn and Tully. Well, that's your problem. You are the next Arn and Tully. You're just great wrestlers. That's all. And then walks off. Like, this son of a bitch thinks that he just insulted my feelings saying that, but he didn't. He just made my dreams come true, end quote. FTR is extremely boring, and they are like to Arn and Tully, but smaller and less entertaining. I'm sorry. I am really sorry. They're lucky that they've had their jobs, because there's an interview with them that John Paz did on this channel just to show you, like, Virgil's interviews did better than them. They are boring. I'll just look up how many views it has right now, just so you guys know I'm not lying. Okay, not in 9 months. In 9 months, I'm looking at it right now. It has 871 views. You guys can look it up on this channel. Most of my news updates get that much, and I'm not even famous. And most people watch my news updates on Facebook now rather than YouTube, since our live streams are ad free on Facebook. But I think FTR might be the most overrated tag team of all time, because they're boring and they're small. And that's probably why, and they're not draws. That's probably why Tony Khan didn't mind giving them the time off, because it's not like they're going to make a difference. I mean, are they good physical workers? Okay, let me just show you guys this so you know I'm not making this up. This was posted 9 months ago, 871 views. Mario Mancini, a jobber from the 80s, can get like 8,000 or 9,000 views on some of his videos, and FTR can't even get 1,000. So yes, hate to break this to you guys, you're fucking boring, and you're smidgets. You're not quite small enough to be a midget, not quite average person height. But that's just my taste. That's just my taste. But I hate that they, just because they've been pushed by various companies, They act like they're actual draws when they're not draws. If they were that critical, AEW would not say, okay, take 2 or 3 months off, 3 or 4 months off. You're not going to make a difference anyways. All right, let me get back to the news. Sorry, I just find it funny. The New Day, as much as I might not be a fan of New Day, I admit their characters and they're entertaining. Okay, I'm being neutral here. I mean, they have charisma. So I understand that comment from Vince McMahon. And I think a lot of people would agree with Vince McMahon on that. All right. Sorry for that rant. And and he went on to say, by the way, he just didn't like us. He wasn't enamored with us. That was the quote. I'm not enamored with you guys either. Sorry. Flying all over the place. I got to adjust my camera now. All right. Well, at least that gave me a good laugh that these guys think that they're as good as Legion of Doom. Jay Briscoe, in some sad news, passed away this past week. Coming off a match series with FTR in Tony Khan's Ring of Honor. I mean, I've told the story. He was driving his daughters in Delaware in his 2016 Chevrolet Silverado 2500 when at about 5:09 p.m. Another Chevrolet Silverado 1500 driven by a 27-year-old female from Frankfort, Delaware, crossed the center of the 2-lane road into the path of Briscoe, who was driving without a seatbelt on, I guess, which caused a head-on collision, and Briscoe and the driver died immediately. His 2 daughters, one of them was in serious condition. The other didn't have feeling in her legs, but apparently now it's coming back. They're in the hospitals in Seaford, Delaware. The Briscoes were under contract to Tony Khan. So there's no doubt in my mind, and I don't know this, but I'd assume that he'd cover the bills related to this because it was Tony Khan that put out this news. And I mean, I do think, while I don't agree with most of Tony Khan, well, not with most, I agree with some of his stuff. I respect Tony Khan, and I do think he's a very nice guy. I just don't have necessarily the same taste in wrestling as him. I have no doubt that he helped with the hospital bills. From my understanding, there's also a GoFundMe that had well over 200,000 going to the daughters that people can look up. So just that was a horrible, horrible situation, and my deepest sympathies to his family for that, who I doubt are watching this. In other wrestling news, AAA held a press conference January 17th with Conan apparently announcing Alberto El Patron coming back to the company. In MMA news, Francis Ngannou did a really dumb decision and turned down reportedly over $8 million to face John Jones. March 4th, instead it's Cyril Gang, or Gong, however you pronounce his name. He was offered the most money of any heavyweight in UFC history, even more than Brock Lesnar, who made $8 million to fight Mark Hunt, UFC 200. Prior to that, he had only made $3 million for his biggest fight. Ngannou said that White wouldn't agree to other things he wanted in the deal. Some of those things included he wanted White to give everyone on the roster medical insurance, which I don't know how he thought White would agree to that. He also wanted it for himself. He said he also wanted a contract that would allow him more independence. Well, you can't have it both ways. I mean, I do understand UFC doesn't pay their fighters as much as boxing. The top fighters do make a lot. $8 million is a huge amount of money. But it's not like Francis Ngannou. He would have been a better draw than this Cyril guy to fight John Jones, but he's not like at Conor McGregor levels of popularity. So to turn down 8 million because you want to be 8 million plus have your independence. I mean, they are a company, and if they're going to push you and promote you, I understand why they didn't want you. They've released you. Apparently, Bellator, PFL, and bare knuckle boxing also express interest in Ngannou, according to Meltzer, but he says it'd be very difficult for Ngannou to get an $8 million payday with any of those companies. And as far as I know, none of those companies have medical insurance for their fighters either. So he's just going to end up working for another company for less money, maybe have easier opponents, but lose that big payday. Apparently, Stipe Miocic is already saying he wants to fight the winner of Cyril versus John Jones this coming July. So that's it for the news. Grandma Daisy wants to see Dusty at the Royal Rumble, or Dustin, maybe. I don't know. Constipated in Sin City. 41 people in the stream. Well, since I don't promote these streams, it's how many people watch at the end. And by the way, there might be 69 watching now, lucky number 69. But we actually get our most views for my news on Facebook these days. But this channel is still kicking butt. We're almost at 200 or 350,000 subscribers. We'll hopefully hit that by the end of the month. No, I don't think Paul Heyman will buy the right to ECW if Vince sells WWE. Who's my favorite NFL team? I don't watch NFL. I'm just representing Dallas, as I'm sure my Texas fans, which I have a lot of them, will appreciate. Will I ever interview Demolition again? I don't know, but PN News was supposed to be today at 3. It's supposed to be happening right now. It's going to happen tomorrow. The Rat Master PN News from WCW. And I'm really looking forward to that. Have I ever worked with Nick Gage? No, nor would I want to. He's another overrated one. AEW is catching on in Canada. I have no idea. Their show in Winnipeg, I think, has just over 6,000 tickets sold, which is very good. I'm not saying that's bad. I'm only surprised that with Chris Jericho, Kenny Omega, and Don Callis, 3 major stars in AEW from Winnipeg, that they didn't have an instant sellout. And let's see how many people that arena can hold. Let's have a look here. Canada Life Center can hold 15,321 fans for hockey. So, in other words, I'm shocked. I'm honestly shocked that Chris Jericho, I mean, that place isn't even half full. But that is a good crowd. But I'm just saying Chris Jericho's big return when he hasn't wrestled there for so long. I mean, they'll curtain off parts of it and call it a sellout no matter what. I'm sure it will get more than 6,000 by the time the show happens, but I would have thought that would have been an instant sellout. Wrestlers get concussions all the time. A lot of the times it's from chair shots, even when you put your hand up. If the chair is heavy enough, or sometimes you don't get your hand up in time, or a few times I've been hit with the chair. Probably 3 times I've been concussed at the back because people have hit me right at the back of the head with the chair when aiming for my back. The worst one I had from wrestling was doing a dive outside the ring and landing head first on the cement in PCW Ultra. Mark saying the truth about FTR. Grandma Daisy loves Virgil. I don't even know what the fuck his name is. Mark Dax something. I don't, as The Rock would say, it doesn't matter what his name is. Chris was right. They're boring. The only reason why a lot of people think they're popular is because Jim Cornette praises them. Because just like the Midnight Express, they're fucking boring. But the Midnight Express was less boring than them. Stan Lane was charismatic. Bobby Eaton was a great technician. But as I've said on here before, my favorite version of Bobby Eaton was when he was the Earl of Eaton with Steve Regal. Another word for a smidget is a manlet. Do I like Triple H? I liked him the best when he was Jean-Paul Levesque in WCW. I don't really have any comment. He's a great politician. But he I don't know. I don't think he's a good booker. He's definitely had great success. I would say I'm neutral towards him. Mark says Vince had them shaving each other's back. That was the most entertaining I've seen out of them. By the way, if maybe WWE isn't interested in them, if they're saying public comments like that, because if their contract's up at the end of April, I know Tony Khan is very generous with people even that WWE doesn't want anymore. But like it seems like they're dissing a company that they could potentially work for right before contract negotiations, which to me, if you want the biggest contract, might not be the smartest thing to do. Mike, no, they're looking to sell WWE by mid-year. What style of wrestling do I like? The realistic style of wrestling. The Bill Watts style of wrestling is my favorite, and the Stampede style, the hard hitting wrestling, more like the old school Japan style before it went into all this acrobatics crap, and it was more ass kickers like the Funks, and like as much as have my feud with Abdullah and the Sheik, I like Brody, I like Stan Hansen, I like. Those are my style of wrestlers. Legion of Doom. I'm not into spots, flippy high spots that don't look realistic, and when referees don't pay attention to rules, and wrestlers that don't look like they could beat their way out of a paper bag in real life. Cole said maybe if they let him wear goggles during the fight. I forget who you're talking to. Peace and Love says Nagano beat Gagne already convincingly. Yeah, he did. And the thing is, they wanted him to fight John Jones. That's why they offered him over $8 million, but he turned it down. Stipe apparently didn't want the first match with Jones at heavyweight, so Cyril was the next best bet. He can't speak English great. I noticed in the press conference, he actually still needs a translator to translate some of the language for him. So I think it's still going to get a decent buy rate because John Jones hasn't fought for so long, but obviously that was not the guy to go with. Favorite American city to wrestle in is Los Angeles. Vincent. The Blue Bloods were underrated. Yes, I was a huge fan of the Blue Bloods. Piper's doing well. What's my favorite all-time wrestling belt? The Winged Eagle belt was my favorite. And on that note, I'm going to go to the gym. I got to shoulders and traps today. Speaking of Legion of Doom, they both had amazing traps. Have a great night, everyone, and a great weekend.
Thank you for watching the Hannibal TV. Please like this video if you enjoyed it and click the subscribe